New Jersey metropolitan region, so it's cold. And it's good to be with so many people so we can get some warmth. Good morning, NGO CSW Vice Chair Rosa. Good to see you. And Annabelle, please put the agenda in the chat again, because as people come in, they won't be able to see the old one. We'll give it another 2 minutes and then we'll get started. We have an exciting program planned for today. It's on education, my favorite topic. So I hope that you'll find it to be as invigorating as I do. And the team, Suleika and Julian, have done a marvelous job in building the panel. And they have 5 excellent panelists who are going to be with us. So thank you everyone for being here. We're going to get started. And my co-chair, Ivy, is not well today, so she sends you her regards and her apologies for being unable to be here. But what I'd like to do now is for us to take a quiet moment for reflection and to send Ivy healing energies.
Sì, figurati.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everyone to please mute yourselves.
Vabbè, qua ho un collegamento in queste, vabbè. No, di niente, io fai vedere. Sì.
I'm going to ask.
Ah, ma tu a un certo punto, domani quando...
So we'd like to begin today's meeting looking at the NGO CSW forum updates. So to date, we have over 3,000 people registered on the VFairs virtual platform. And we want you to start familiarizing yourself and networking on the platform ahead of the NGO CSW forum. The parallel event applications have all been sent out. If you have not received yours, please first check your spam folder, because it's very often the case that those notifications are lying in your spam folder. If after checking your spam folder, you find that you still don't have the announcement about your parallel event, please send a note to info@ngocsw.org and someone will get back to you. We received, believe it or not, over 820 applications for parallel events, and they were all accepted. So NGO CSW 68 forum is going to be bigger and better than ever before. And we are appreciative to all of you, to the executive committee, to our consultant, Hudi Guliyekin, who we all know and love from her years as chair. And Grace, please stop sharing the whiteboard. Rachel or Annabelle, are you able to stop the sharing of the whiteboard? Okay, so we're going to have 400 virtual, 400 in-person parallel events, and 420. So for parallel event organizers, there's going to be a training session on January 25th at 10 a.m. And the the login was sent to you, the Zoom link was sent in your notice of acceptance. So please look at your notice, and we will be sending out a reminder. There will also be a training for exhibit booth handbook ad purchasers. That's going to be on February 1st at 10 a.m. And then the next monthly meeting will be a training session on the platform for everyone. And that's going to be at our next monthly meeting on February 20th at 11 a.m. So we have 3 training sessions scheduled between now and February 20th. So everyone will be up to speed on the new fabulous platform. Artisan Fair applications are now open, and the deadline is Monday, January 22nd. We hope to have many, many vendors from all over the globe. So please reach out to those artisans in your network and encourage them to apply. Again, the deadline is Monday, January 22nd. The exhibit booth applications are open, and the deadline for in-person exhibit booths is the 12th of February. The deadline for virtual exhibit booths is the 26th of February. We're doing something a little different this year. At the Armenian Cultural Center on February 11th and 15th, we're having a healing and community space. And we hope to have Reiki and meditation and all types of modalities to help women heal and to bring peace during the crazy time that we know defines the NGO CSW Forum. So please be on the lookout for information about the healing and community space. Now, our last update is about the CSW Reform Survey. And we sent it out to our entire list. To date, we've received only 350 responses. And we know that there are more of you who are familiar with the UN and who have important content that you can share. So for that reason, we have extended the deadline to the 31st of January. So please, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. Please take the time to add your voice to our efforts to bring change to CSW and to make it strong again. Because we know that the agreed conclusions are not enforceable. Only through advocacy can we work with our member states to make sure that they are implemented. But we need to change that. We need to make it mandatory to have the agreed conclusions implemented. So that's what we're looking for, and I hope that you will all go to the forum and complete the survey. Now, one last thing that I'd like to add before we turn it over to Rosa. Many of us will be coming to New York for the forum and for CSW 68, and many will be online. But I encourage you to think about CSW locally and to think about what can you do in your local position to make more women aware. I'm doing an event at our public library in order to spread the word to women in my region. And I encourage you all to think about how can you extend CSW beyond New York, beyond the confines of the virtual environment. How can you reach more people? So thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Rosa Lazard, NGO CSW Vice Chair and Co-Chair of the Advocacy Research Group, who is going to present NGO CSW's 6 recommendations for CSW 68. Rosa,
Thank you
the
so
mic
much,
is yours.
Pamela. Thank you. And Happy New Year, Feliz Año, to everyone here. It's great to see you all in this new year. Hope you're all re-energized and reinvigorated, especially with the information that I'm going to be providing for you on behalf of the NGO CSW and the Advocacy and Research Group. We present these advocacy recommendations for the CSW Zero Draft. These 6 recommendations were developed by the Advocacy Research Group, or ARG for short, a committed and diverse group of expert representatives from our global constituency. By way of background, these recommendations were spearheaded by the NGO CSW Executive Committee, followed by, if you recall, a global survey to our constituency, which we hope you participated in. And then we specialized and did some dialoguing around them to look at how these recommendations were addressing poverty, strengthening institutions, the priority theme of the CSW, and as well as the review theme, which is on social protection systems, access to public services, and sustainable infrastructure for gender perspective and the empowerment of women and girls. We have sent these recommendations to the CSW Bureau, the 45 members of the Commission on the Status of Women, and the 193 member states of the UN, and also to our institutional and civil society stakeholders. And we have them now on our website, and I know our colleagues Annabelle and Rachel will put that link, but in brief, let me just go over. The first is on social justice and poverty. And in this first recommendation, we emphasize a just economic model that places social justice and human rights as central to alleviate women and girls' poverty. We recommend that governments adopt programs and policies that recognize gender equality as a requirement for social justice and development, as well as addressing and eliminating the root causes of poverty. We emphasize addressing the regressive and persistent repressive wave against women's human rights by eliminating harmful attitudes, norms, and belief systems, and addressing the constellation of human rights violations and abuses targeting women and girls in all their diversity by urgently implementing effective measures to respect and protect their fundamental human rights. On education and poverty, in which we will go in depth in today's monthly meeting, we recommend enlisting the poorest and most marginalized women and girls in the formulation, design, and development of adequately financed policies and programs in order to eliminate the multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination regarding the pandemic, the economic crisis, armed conflict, the climate crisis disruptions, all of these disruptions to education. Around the third recommendation, which is on women's poverty and climate change, we recognize that the consequences of climate change are only projected to get worse. So we recommend engaging women and girls, the most impoverished and marginalized, in effective and sustainable designing and development of adequately financed policies and programs in order to eliminate the multiple and intersecting economic and climate change challenges. Climate change's multiplier effect on women's poverty is worsening and upending women's livelihood. So we further recommend climate finance, access to land and technology, that these are needed to support mitigation and adaptation efforts and the loss and damage in these countries to frontline communities. The fourth is on gender bias and economic policy. We emphasize incorporating gender analysis into economic policies to consider differential impact on women. We want to close the gender pay gap through measures like pay transparency, equal pay legislation, and gender balance leadership. And we want to promote equitable access to financial services through non-gender discriminatory practices and policies. The fifth is on the impact of the debt crisis on women's poverty. Here we recommend governments must prioritize the public and private debt levels that have been increasing to alarming and unprecedented levels, that they eliminate these debt at country levels. Donor countries should also fulfill their commitment to 0.7% of GNP, gross national product, for official development assistance. And we further ask that they earmark for gender equality and women's rights organizations. And the sixth recommendation is a youth intersectional recommendation, which includes all of the 5 that we've mentioned. And we emphasize engaging with youth and girls in the formulation, design, and development of policies and programs regarding poverty, financing for development, and economic empowerment of women and girls and other marginalized communities. Through a social justice and gender perspective, we emphasize addressing intersecting issues that affect and/or contribute to multi-generational poverty, including the impacts of climate change, the debt crisis, the gender bias and economic policy, access to education to ensure that young and future generations are not trapped in a cycle of poverty. These are the recommendations that we have. We hope that you will be able to use them with your constituency and in your advocacy plans. And as Pamela said, we're going to have these trainings, that the training on January 25th, advocacy training, that will help you in utilizing these recommendations. So thank you so much, Pamela. Back to you. And just to, before I forget, I really want to thank the committed volunteers of the ARG, because without their help, we wouldn't be able to really develop these. So thank you all. You know who you are. You're great team members, and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you to the ARG committee that worked tirelessly to develop these 6 recommendations. It was amazing to see their weekly meetings, and they were women from around the globe who came together under Rosa and Rahel's leadership to make sure that NGO CSW's voice was a reflection of what our survey excuse me, showed us that you, our constituents, were concerned about. So thank you, Rosa, and thank you, committee. At this time, we are very pleased to invite Johannes Lang from UN Women to give us updates about CSW 68. Johannes, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Pamela, and thank you, colleagues in NGO CSW, for giving us the chance to update you. I hope you can hear me well. So I maybe would like to start with NGO registration, because as you know, the registration for the official meetings for ECOSOC accredited organizations is underway. We have a large number of registrations so far. We have about actually more than 5,800 approved registrations. And the deadline is coming up on the 26th of January 2024. So by then, please, we would ask all participants who are representing ECOSOC accredited organizations at the session to complete their registrations, and also the focal points in those organizations, in ECOSOC accredited organizations, to approve the registrations. Because as you know, it's the organization, it's the ECOSOC accredited NGO that approves the registrations in Indico. It's not UN Women, and we would ask you to please complete all approvals before the 26th of January, because after that the data will be processed and will be handed over to the UN Secretariat for then preparing for CSW. If you have any questions concerning the approval or registration, please send an email to csw@unwomen.org. This website is also on, this email address is also on our website, on the CSW website under NGO registration and participation. And we'll try to respond and support as best as we can. We are receiving a lot of emails these days, as you can imagine, so we'll respond as soon as possible. I would also like to thank all organizations who have submitted a written statement to the Commission, and I'm happy to let you know that all 170 written statements that we have received are now published on the CSW website. So they have been basically published by the UN Secretariat as a meeting documentation for CSW, and are all linked now on the CSW 68 website. Later this month, we will also open the online expressions for interest to give an oral statement at the general discussion, or to intervene at any of the interactive dialogues. And we're also happy to say that in continuation of the hybrid modalities that were in place in previous years, it will be possible again to either give an oral statement during the general discussion in person in the conference room, or to send a pre-recorded video if for some reason the organization is not able to attend the session in New York. Also for interventions from the floor at interactive dialogues, it will be possible again if participants are not in New York to participate and give us an intervention remotely, always as time permits. And also just to highlight that ECOSOC accredited organizations will be able to express interest for these contributions closer to the end of the month. The CSW website will have again the online forms to express interest in either the general discussion or interactive dialogues. I'm also happy to let you know that the CSW chair will brief NGOs on Friday. I hope you have received the announcement. It went out to all registered and approved participants for CSW 68. It will be a virtual briefing. We expect a large number of civil society representatives from ECOSOC accredited organizations that signed up for CSW to attend. So we would kindly ask that, due to technical limitations, that maybe a maximum of 2 participants per organization would log in. Also, because of technical limitations, it's basically the login is first come, first served, but we hope that we will be able to accommodate as wide of a civil society participation as possible. Maybe also to give an outlook that the SG's report on the priority theme will come out soon. So it's currently being processed for issuance in the 6 UN official languages, and is expected to come out at the end of the month. I think I'll stop it here for concerning updates from our side, and happy to respond to any questions or also in the chat if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. There is person who wanted to know, do they need, Ajima Gonzalez wanted to know if she needed to register both to Indigo and with NGO CSW if she is an ECOSOC accredited organization.
Yes, please go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, yes, so if you're planning to participate in the official session, in the official meetings taking place at UNHQ, then you will need to be registered and approved by your organization in Indico. If you register in Indico, that doesn't mean that you're automatically registered for the NGO CSW forum, and I'm sure Pamela will be able to explain more. So if you want to participate in both fora, then as well as in the official meetings as in the NGO CSW forum, then you would need to register on both platforms.
Thank you, Johannes. Are there any other questions? If so, put them in the chat now, or raise your hand. We have time for, I think, 3 questions. Okay, Lily, I see your hand.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Johannes, for the update. And my apologies if I missed it. Could you share with us how we can register for the CSW chair briefing to the civil society?
Yes, so thank you so much, Lily, for the question. Yes, so the briefing is open to a registered and approved representatives of ECOSOC accredited NGOs, and they have received an invitation or an announcement with the link for the Zoom meeting. We have also shared that link with NGO CSW, and we hope that, and once you basically are able to register using that link, then you should be able to access the meeting first come, first served, unfortunately, because of the technical limitations on Friday.
Susan. Thank you. Good to see you, Susan.
Hello, Johannes. Thank you very much for coming to brief us. Is it possible to get the contact information for the members of the CSW Bureau so that we can get in touch with them with our advocacy points?
Thank you for that. Yes, I'm sure that NGO CSW, who has been in touch with the chair and the bureau members, will be able to relay that. But basically, it's the missions addresses. On the CSW website, you will find the bureau members. So it's basically the Philippines, the chair, Argentina, Latvia, Netherlands, and Cabo Verde as vice chairs. So we would suggest, if you want to write directly to the individual bureau members, to send to the permanent missions.
Excellent. Thank you. And the last question, Lindsay Green.
Hi, Johannes. We've had some problems trying to log in to actually sort of agree people's registrations. Do we just keep trying to get in? Or is it just there's a big overcapacity of people trying to approve last-minute registrations that's the issue?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay. So we would actually, if you have trouble approving in Indico, then please send an email to csw@unwomen.org, and we will try to help as soon as we can. So we would not recommend to wait until the last day, because then usually the system gets very busy. So as soon as you can, please reach out to us at csw@unwomen.org, and we'll try to support as best as we can. And if there's some technical issue that we would not be able to support, then we will escalate it to the Indico team in Geneva.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the link, Uri, as well.
Thank you.
So, Johannes, thank you very much for sharing your presence and the information. The update was invaluable. And I'm going to ask if anyone else has a question for you to put it in the chat, and I will send it to Johannes.
Thank you so much for having
You're
us.
welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Goodbye. And at this time, we are going to turn the program over to Suleika Frank and Julian Nazareth, who are members of the NGO CSW Executive Committee, and they are going to introduce the program on education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Hello, everyone. Welcome again, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you making the time to participate in the January monthly meeting of NGO CSW. Please remember to mute yourself for now. You will have the opportunity to speak during Q&A towards the end of session. There are 17 SDG targets to be achieved, and our team is adding them to the chat box for your use. To name a few, SDG 8 is decent work and economic growth, SDG 2, zero hunger, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. Today's session is spotlighting the work of SDG 4, quality of education. Here we intend to focus on the targets and effective means of achieving them. Some of the targets for SDG 4 by 2030 are 1, to ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education so that they're ready for primary education. 2, by 2030, to ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, including university. And 3, by 2030, substantially increase the number of youth and adult who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurship. Please see the remaining targets added to our chat box by our coordinators. Thank you so much for adding them. And we are also going to be sharing the official indicators of SDG 4 achievement in our chat box as well. Okay, so let's get started to the substance of our meeting. We have a stellar group of panelists today, and I will now hand it over to Jillian Nazareth de Souza, Communications Secretary.
Thank you, Suleika, and thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. It is with great gratitude that I welcome our experts joining. They are a diverse group doing extremely different work with a common goal: achieving gender equality SDG 5 through SDG 4 quality education. Today's panelists are policy advisors, CSO leaders, educational practitioners, all of whom will share their work and often unappreciated efforts to achieve SDG 4. Please know that we appreciate you. I welcome Dina Buchbinder, Valentina Bodrug-Lung, Hilary Diane Webb, and Yusuf Aiden Musa. If I can ask the coordinators to please spotlight them to join Suleika and myself on stage. I'd like to begin with you, Yusuf. You are, oh, I'll wait till he comes on. I see Dina. Hey, Dina.
Hi.
If we can, I'd like to start with Yusuf. Yusuf, my question, hi, good morning. Yusuf, you have been a counselor at the Permanent Mission of Djibouti for almost a decade now, and Djibouti has a very strong education policy with free primary education for girls. I'd ask if you could talk a little bit about the genesis of your country's education policy and its focus on SDG 4.
Yes, thank you very much, Jillian, and good morning to all. Happy New Year to all. It's a pleasure to communicate with you on this important subject. I've been here for practically a decade. Through has been some gaps during my presence here because I have to return and then come back to New York. This is the process. But most importantly, in Djibouti, the gender equality in access to basic education is currently quite satisfactory. There is a good track. Although we are actually, the Ministry of Education and other officials in Djibouti are also in assessment of the effect of the COVID-19. And we believe that in generally we are in a good track. And there are also efforts to enhance cycle completion rates. And this has been coming from the fact that there have been more pronounced dropout rates for girls. But I would like to highlight two specific points regarding the overall situation of the SDGs 4 in Djibouti. First point is since 2000, Djiboutian children aged 6 to 16 have mandatory education under our national education law. The overall enrollment rate increased from 60% to 80%. Now it's going to 85, 89%. And it's leading to increase in school population, particularly for the profit of girls. The second point is talking under the target 4.5. We can see that gender inequalities in Djibouti are very low, and the parity index is very close to 1. That means there is no huge problem. And this indicates that disparities in the education field are currently going away from Djibouti. So we can see that we have been doing a lot of work and is paying. Under target, also wanted to add that under target 4.A, there are efforts that are actively underway to build new schools, facilities, or modify existing ones to address educational needs of children, including those with disabilities. The primary goal is to achieve and create a safe, inclusive, and effective learning environment that meet the diverse needs of all students. And yes, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you again.
Yusuf, I wanted to say thank you to you. The fact that you say that girls have free education 6 through 16 years, I believe you said, is so heartening, and that the gender gap is also reducing is really good news. And so when you start the year with that kind of, positive news, are you able to share some of what needs to be done in Djibouti to make substantial achievements going forward? It's also very heartening to see a member state who's so clear on the indicators, the parameters, and following the process. Is there anything you could share further with us in realizing SDG 4?
Oh, yes, there are always challenges everywhere. And we think that even though the gender parity is nearly achieved in primary education, and starting to decline in middle and secondary levels, especially for girls and rural and impoverished areas which have limited access to education. What I mean is you can have a very good gender parity in some area, where you cannot have it in other areas, especially in the rural areas and impoverished areas, which there is a limited access to educational resources. So the government make it a prioritization to provide essential service to those schools for enhancing the educational environment. All primary school and lower secondary schools in Djibouti have access to electricity and drinking waters. But however, we are seeing that there is a problem with internet access and computer for educational purpose, of course. They are low in primary school at 5% and insufficiently developed in the middle schools. So addressing this gap requires increased effort from our side to promote more equal educational opportunities for all, as stated in our education national law system. And also at our level, much of our traditional diplomacy at the bilateral and multilateral level is used to generate support for achieving this goal in general. Our political leaderships and diplomats are all working to seek more allies and friends to discuss, to see how we can improve the situation. And I think we can do something very positive on these particular goals, like we did at the time of the MDGs. At the time of the MDGs, which was the ancestor of SDGs, if I may say it, we achieved this goal of educational inclusion for everyone in Djibouti. And Djiboutian officials are all engaged also in the country in a series of consultations with all stakeholders and work with them on how to keep the path to improve the education for all system we decided to implement. I think that's what I wanted to say, and I thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I'm really impressed with the really clear strategy that you have for 2024. You know that you want to bridge the digital divide. You know you're looking for partnerships. I encourage you, you have on the floor with you a lot of CSOs who are doing work in this area, UN entities and colleagues on the call. So if there is something that you think CSOs can collaborate with the government together, feel free to put information in the chat box. My colleagues will be more than happy to pick up on it and share the information. And with that, I'd like to move to Dina. Dina, you are the founder and president of Education for Sharing, an organization that uses the power of play. Thank you, first of all, for accepting my invitation. I understand that at growing up, you didn't like to sit still and you didn't understand the sense of school. And that is why you dreamed of how education could be improved. Please tell us a little bit about the power of play.
Thank you so much, Gillian, and everyone here on this call. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you and to share. I think most kids have that experience, because being a kid means that we can't really sit still to listen passively. We need the opportunity to move, to learn, to bring about the best that we have in ourselves. And if we are asked to sit and listen passively, to receive information, but not to be able to share back what we're experiencing, what we're feeling, what we're thinking, questions that come up, and in a playful way is really the element where human beings can thrive in the most beautiful way, because play is for everyone. It does not exclude any. It's for all colors, sizes, smells, tastes, for everyone. And so that's why I found in play a really human way to connect with myself, with others, and with the world. And that's why I don't think I am an outlier. I think this is a kind of education that we should be bringing up for everyone. We are going through a kind of education still that belongs to the Industrial Revolution, where become more like the factory kind of learner. And we are not a factory. We're humans. We want to play, to laugh, to learn, to connect, to feel, to be seen, to see. And so this is a tremendously powerful way to teach and to learn anything. You could be talking about science, finance, about social emotional skills, civic values, and of course, the Sustainable Development Goals, which most people really don't know about, or they don't know how to connect with, because they sound like very lofty and far away goals. So it's really powerful when you translate these great global challenges into an activity that you can experience and that means something to you, and where you discover, why do you care about gender equality? Why do you, as an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or any age, why do you actually care? And what can you do about this? What is your role? How can you be an agent of change towards this from your local community, whether you're in a remote area or in a city or wherever you are? There's always something you can do. And that is why the power of play is so critical.
Thank you, Dina. I feel like now I need to go out and play and then figure out what I learned from that. But I also want to ask you, because you are currently also the chair of the board of the United Nations Youth Association in Mexico. Can you share a little bit of the work that is being done over there, any of the plans, and what can we expect, or what is we as CSOs can also expect if we're working in that region of the world?
Yes, thank you so much. We are, so we belong to the World Federation of United Nations Associations, and there are also the youth part, and we collaborate in many ways. Many of the UNAs and UNA's youth do work regarding the simulation of UN summits. And we have decided in the Mexico Association of Youth that we will partner. So the work that we do is the work from Education for Sharing. This is the work that we do actively in person and digitally since the pandemic, but mostly in person with people everywhere. And so we have decided to focus our work in a very pragmatic, real, actionable form of communication with youth, starting from preschool and onwards to the university age. And we work mainly with teachers. So this has been our, and teachers and educators, because we also work in other spaces, education spaces, like museums, like community centers, like parks, like centers for women that have suffered violence and their children. So we work really across the board to bring about a real change. So this is very exciting for us. This is the plan that we have. We have basically started at the UNA and grew from there. So there's sister organizations that work towards the same goals.
I like that. And if I can request that there are any contact details or information, website that you'd like to share, please do so in the chat box so that all of the members of this committee can have access should they so require as well. And I'm going to hold that thought with you, Dina, for a moment, because we've heard now from a policy advisor and an entrepreneurial CEO. But I turn to you now, Hilary Webb, because your expertise lies in educational practices for pre- and post-collegiate students, especially in institutional leadership. You heard from Yusuf about how policies can help. You've heard from Dina how on-ground action one can get involved and make change. What are some of the real life solutions that you think that can be implemented to address an remove institutional bias against minority communities?
Hello, and thank you for having me. Yes. So I've been working or doing research on Black doctoral students who attend historically Black colleges and universities. And I found that the historically Black colleges and universities have a certain set of asset-based resources that they use to push their doctorates forward. And that includes other mothering, which is a term coined by Patricia Hill Collins in Black feminist thought, which basically means is that it's a more familial way of connecting with your students, that you take a community role in caring for a child, mentoring, sponsoring modeling, financial assistance, and eliminating known barriers that inhibit students. So throughout my professional work, I've noticed that those elements have been present throughout undergraduate, throughout middle school. Once you strip away all the bells and whistles, those are there. And so I want to give you a little background of the program that I work with now. So as someone who's been working in higher education, both public and private, for over 20 years, the work that I do to bring equity to education and higher education for students who have been marginalized, and that's usually students of color, has had great success, which is measured through our graduation and attrition rates. Attrition rates very low, graduation rates very high. At the CUNY Graduate Center, I helped run a program at the Staten High School Center that helped bring technology to middle school students. So back then, well, we partnered with the New York City Board of Education and the Children's Aid Society, a community-based program to bring computers to classrooms and give free computers to students. And we did that through private and public grants, but back then they thought you just needed to give technology to the students, and we know that's not the case. You need to do more than that. So when I moved to NYU and I joined the Opportunity Programs, which is a department that helps students who have been economically marginalized and historically excluded from higher education. And there's 3 programs. This is our high school program, our program geared to historically excluded students, and our economically marginalized students is HEOP. And each is unique, but the principles are the same. They're more economically marginalized compared to the average NYU student. And students who are accepted receive tuition assistance, housing, stipends, tutoring, and they participate in community events. We hire students for various work-study positions, and in total, our students never take out more than $20,000 for a 4-year education at a private university. And ours at one point was considered one of the most expensive around the country. Most of our staff participated or were in an opportunity program themselves. I myself was a McNair Scholar that helps prepare students for graduate school. So what I want to say is our program writ large has a better persistence rate than all of NYU because of the aforementioned support that we give to our students. And so when we're looking for solutions, we provide more than just money. We provide an environment where students can thrive, where counselors, instructors know what imposter syndrome is, intersectionality, culturally relevant pedagogy, microaggressions, misogyny or stereotype threats, to name a few. They can help work through those issues with students. And we do this by creating our own form of cultural capital for our students of color. So those are some of the solutions that we use to help students move forward. But also you have to make space for health and wellness and self-care. Students often feel overwhelmed with the amount of responsibility that they have with school for not only doing well in your classes, but also creating a brand or a name for themselves, doing internships, working, helping out their families. And our students have housing insecurity, food insecurity. So we try to do the best we can to help eliminate those barriers so they can thrive elsewhere. So that's some of the solutions.
Hillary, thank you so much. And I notice you talk a lot about NYU and largely a US-based issue. If we were to address some of this to a global audience or switch it up for a particular region, what would be a commonality or an easy thread that someone else could pick up and implement?
So I talk a lot about having counselors. So we have instructors in our program that help the students manage some of the workload, but counseling, I would say, is the key. So the counselors have to be educated in the issues that the students themselves are going through. So that would be food insecurity, that would be housing insecurity, that would be going into a field that they're most interested in, but maybe not lucrative, and they have to help their families. So all those issues, as well as mental health issues and knowing where to direct the students to. So counseling is key. If you had to strip away everything else, of course, money always helps, but having someone who understands the culture, can talk to the people in the community and help them through, that would be the most important.
That sounds good. Counseling is key. There is a question in the chat box for your connection details. So if you're willing, please put it in the chat box. People would like to connect with you. And you also talked about restful spaces, healing spaces. And so I'm very glad to say that when Pamela started this morning, she talked about how this year NGO CSW is making those kind of spaces specifically also for all of the CSOs to be able to utilize when they are in New York during CSW 68. So thank you, Hillary, for sharing your experience. And I actually now want to follow up with another professional, a professor by profession at Moldova State University, and also the president of the Gender Center, but also co-founder of the Platform for Gender Equality at the Republic of Moldova. Valentina, welcome. I invite you to speak on your organization's work and its using and how it is using quality education to achieve gender equality.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'd like to appreciate the experience of all my colleagues, and thank you very much for this opportunity to present our modest but very important work also. Gender Center and Platform for Gender Equality from Republic of Moldova are focused on gender education of different target groups: youth, teacher, civil society representatives, civil servants, and large population. Inclusion, equity, and gender equality and through education is a cornerstone of SDG 4 transformative education agenda. One of the main subjects recent years in SDG monitoring and implementation is acceleration. And education is one of the biggest accelerators for achieving gender equality. We contributed to connection between SDG 4 and SDG 5. Training, summer camp, leadership academy, awareness campaign were focused to break down gender stereotypes as discriminatory social norms. Also, we supported girls and young women to develop the skills on the future, specifically on STEM and digitalization related fields, and raising awareness among students on gender equality and intersectionality at a young age. It's very important to mention that we focused special attention to empower girls and women become leaders of change. At Moldova State University level, we supported the special courses on gender education. In vet school, we strengthening attention on knowledge and skills of boys and girls, on prevention of gender-based violence, on sexual harassment prevention and bullying, specifically including cyberbullying. At Platform of Gender Equality, we create different informative and educational resources. And also we work a lot to offering counseling, specifically counseling for survivors of GBV victims, and mentoring programs. I would like to mention that in our case, It's very interesting and useful experience and practices, how we connected our efforts between academia sector and civil society sector, because it's different experience, different resources, different expertise, and it's very important to connect all. Of course, we need to work more, specifically in the context that we have in region, this humanitarian crisis generated specifically in my region and my country by war in Ukraine. And in this context, we have a new challenge for education system, how to help our girls and boys to be more resilient on GBV, sexual violence and sexual harassment. And special thanks to our partners for our international partners, UN Women, UNFPA, UNESCO, OSCE Mission Team Moldova, who specifically supported our work in this field. Thank you very much.
Valentina, thank you. And I have to say that part of the reason you're here and that I found you as a speaker is part of the collaboration and the more openness that we are doing. And in full transparency, you are also an organizing partner at the Women's Major Group for Europe and Central America. You are also an expert at HLPF. And I was wondering, for this specific audience, do you have methodologies, tricks that we as NGOs or civil society can use to better navigate the system and leverage SDG 4 to achieve SDG 5?
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's very important for all of us due to the fact it's an honor for me to be organizer partner of Women's Major Group. And specifically, I would like to mention the significant role of Women's Major Group and SDG advocacy and implementation at global and regional level. Goal number 5, it's cross-cutting pillar of 2030 agenda. We know about this. And as methodological issues, we would like to mention the most important aspects. As important tool, we use as Women's Major Group position paper. Every year, specifically for high-level political forum, our team prepared this strategical document that includes analysis of situation, challenges, recommendation addressed to different governance and international partners. But specifically for education, our recommendation is take targeted and sustained action to remove gender-based stereotypes and discrimination within and across education system, from teacher recruitment and training to curriculum and materials development. It's very important to integrate gender equality, human rights, and climate justice explicitly into all areas of curriculum, including comprehensive sexuality education. During the last year, in the frame of high-level political forum, special side event was organized on gender inclusion and education. Nordic feminist advocacy session were organized specifically in order to strengthen capacity and knowledge of our Women's Major Group members. Training, informative sessions addressed to our members was focused on different, very important subjects. Anti-gender movement, CEDAW, connection between CEDAW and SDG, gender-sensitive language, and other. It's very important to mention as to our side events, and of course participation, active involvement our members during LGPF session and regional forums. And I would like to encourage my colleague to be part of Women's Major Group and work together. And if it's possible, Julian, only our some important message from Women's Major Group: holistic and comprehensive approach to Agenda 2030. All SDGs should be connected, and intersectionality implemented and to have intersectional approach. Gender equality should be treated as prerequisite for achieving all SDG. And education is powerful tool to promote gender equality and intersectionality during the life cycle. But the life cycle approach will enhance our work on gender equality and intersectionality greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say the ease with which we talk about SDGs and what each of the goals, targets, and indicators are, I think we all need to pat ourselves on the back because we seem to have it down pretty okay. At least we've got the education part on this. But last but not the least, I see we have Amy Tolia who has joined us. Amy, thank you so much. It's lovely to see you again 1 year down the line. You are a partnership specialist at UNICEF's Learning Passport. You have worked with different countries, CSOs, and tech companies to ensure improved access to quality education. I give you the floor for 5 minutes to share a little bit of what the Learning Passport is, how it works, who can access it. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me and giving me the time to speak about the Learning Passport. I have a few slides. I promise it will not be death by PowerPoint, but just a couple of visuals in terms of what we're doing and the progress we've made over the last year. Is it possible to, I think I need to be enabled to be able to share my screen?
I think our coordinators will be able to do that for you in
Perfect.
a second, so it shouldn't be
Perfect.
a problem.
Great. And just as background, and thank you so much for sharing a little bit. So the Learning Passport is UNICEF's flagship digital education program. As Jillian had said, I sit and am focused on kind of bringing together the right partners to be able to enable the environment, the resourcing, the strategy for the sustainability of the Learning Passport. Now, for context, and I feel like it's always good to ground us, but I feel like this audience is well aware of all the things that I'm about to share. But the Learning Passport came about, we were created not too long ago in 2018 because we were looking across the education landscape. One of the things that we noticed is UNICEF and across the UN there was a record number of children that were on the move, that were crossing borders, and that across their kind of educational journey, it was years until they were integrating into national systems. And so we needed a solution that would allow them to continue their education, continued skills training, but that would move along with them. And so we knew that there needed to be a solution that was going to be grounded in something that could move across borders, that was flexible, easy to use, that could track your progress, that was available offline, online. So we were addressing a lot of the barriers I think my fellow speakers, especially Yusuf, had touched on. And so out of that came this idea of the Learning Passport. And the program is focused on, and I will just share a couple of my slides here. Perfect. So once we had kind of built out the core elements, and I'll touch on that in a minute, we determined that the focus of the program was going to be really on how do we take emerging technological concepts, how do we take innovation that's happening all around us, and really focus that on delivering quality education and skilling for children and young people. We're grounded in the SDGs, and over the next 10 years, we're hyper-focused on being able to support the learning of 55 million children. And I'd say for us, access is the first step, but ultimately we're very much, our focus is on how are we improving that learning and how are we demonstrating the improvement of that learning. So we are very much grounded in that educational, driving the educational progress. So there are 5 key elements that go into the Learning Passport. We have a technology platform that's powered by a leading tech provider, Microsoft. We leverage our internal technical teams. So because we sit in UNICEF, we have a variety of teams that are working at the country level. We integrate into those existing systems. And then in terms of how we're delivering this, I think we learned a lot during COVID, and I think we all experienced skilling and education online. And the Learning Passport is not a standalone system. We integrate into classrooms, learning centers, we integrate into formal systems, informal systems, non-formal, and we do that with the support of an extensive ecosystem of partners, and that's partners across sectors, across different technical acumen. And then we're able, as I mentioned before, to leverage the UNICEF kind of global footprint in 190 countries. One of the things that I will say is core to the Learning Passport is our ability to address equitable access. So I think Yusuf has spoken about a lot of his priorities for 2024 is really being focused on addressing some of those barriers. Access is a huge barrier, especially around connectivity. So one of the core delivery methods of the Learning Passport is we're able to deliver digital learning without the internet. And I'll share a video in the chat if you wanted to learn a little bit more about how we're doing that. So what does this mean? As I mentioned, the core focus of ours is adaptability. I think Valentina had spoken a lot about the importance of fitting context, being able to reflect context. And for us, that is central. We are a highly adaptable, flexible program. No two learning passports in country and even within countries look the same. We have over, I think, 40 different learning passport platforms, and they're very much tailored to the audience. They're tailored not just from a language and a local context perspective, but also, what does this audience need? So if we're looking at teachers, if we're looking at early childhood education, if we're looking at skilling for young people, life skills for girls, all of that is really integrated into the adaptation of the program, because ultimately we will need to deliver something that is relevant, context specific, or we're not going to advance in terms of improving those learning outcomes. So here are a couple of examples of how the Learning Passport comes to life. In Nigeria, we are the digital learning platform for the formal education system. We deliver everything from primary to secondary formal education across to life skills. We have a robust teacher training component there, because teachers are core, if not the heart of everything we do. In Lebanon, we've been doing emergency response work there, heavily focused previously on skilling work. We do a technical and vocational training program that's been brought online. And now we've expanded due to kind of the lack of access to schools and safety being a concern. We're also now supporting access to the formal education system there for both Lebanese as well as refugee communities. In Sudan is one of our probably say 10 emergency responses that we're working on. And we're rolling out our offline program there because of the lack of connectivity to a number of learning centers to support the continued access to education, especially since the violence erupted last year. And the last example I'll share is around Mexico. So Mexico, we've been using the Learning Passport there for several years, online, offline. It's focused on children who've left behind or who are not as part in the formal education system, either because they are having to pursue jobs or because they have fallen so far behind that they don't want to integrate into the formal system. So in Mexico, our program is very much focused on catch-up learning, and then also support to children on the move that are coming either across Mexico or through South and Central America. I will mention one thing in terms of Mexico that's been it was a big milestone for us. As I mentioned, access is kind of part of the equation, but ultimately having a positive impact, improving learning is our focus. And we just released a research paper in Mexico that's one of many first kind of research that we are doing that indicates that the Learning Passport is having a positive impact on learning. I'll put a link in there in the chat for you guys if you wanted to dive deeper. But this will be one of kind of a longitudinal research study that we're undertaking over the next 5 to 10 years to look at the impact of the Learning Passport on education. And last but not least, a little bit of a snapshot of what we've been able to accomplish across the totality of the program, and then also in 2023. So we're in 38 countries, as I mentioned to you. No, not one of those is identical. We support everything from early childhood education. So that's, providing parents and caregivers with resources, training teachers and how to use digital tooling. We're reaching 6.3 million learners, and in 2023 alone, we were able to expand that by 3.5 million. And a couple of the stats on here are in particular, we've included them because I think the ability for us to serve content that speaks directly to the learner is critically important. So we do everything from mental health and psychosocial support to green skilling, green jobs, digital literacy, basic computer skills, across to the full gamut of the formal education space. So I will leave it there. Thank you again. I'll put a couple of resources in the chat, but welcome any questions.
Amy, if that was your scorecard, I'm almost afraid to ask what's coming up in 2024, but I'm going to do it anyway. So given all the statistics that you just shared and all the successes, what would be the one thing you'd like us to know that's happening in this year?
Yeah, I'd probably say two things are critically important. So one of which is around our offline work. Connectivity, and I spent the majority of the pandemic in New York City, and connectivity down the street for us, was a challenge. And so we're really focused on how do we bring digital learning through the Learning Passport to marginalized communities that don't have connectivity, and our offline Learning Passport is the solution around that. We've been piloting it for 2 years. We've been really thoughtful about how we're rolling out the technology and the associated kind of ecosystem and scaffolding around it. So we'll be doing a lot more in terms of offline. The second piece I would probably mention, actually I'm going to add an additional one. The second piece is what we've been seeing with the Learning Passport is if we have a program in place, as I mentioned, it's not a standalone, it's integrated into what UNICEF is doing. But what we've been finding is other organizations, other sections of UNICEF, we sit in education, are coming to us and saying, hey, look, you have the footprint, you have the the technical expertise, you have the platform, you have the offline ecosystem. How can we leverage that to train cohorts that are important to us? How can we utilize this in the most efficient and effective way possible? So we'll be doing a lot more of that cross collaboration, using schools, learning centers as a center of learning, but expanding beyond just, what UNICEF traditionally calls our core education mandate. So looking at, community healthcare workers, emergency response frontline workers. We did a lot of this in terms of water and sanitation during the pandemic, but continuing to do that in a really thoughtful way across not only our organization, the UN, but with others. And the third piece that I would mention is what we've been finding, and we've gotten some incredible inputs in terms of some of the surveys we're done, but in particular, girls are asking for different types of training and skilling opportunities than their cohorts are. For example, in Latin America, the number 2, first and foremost, they're looking at job skills, but the number 2 requested training opportunity that we're finding from girls is around financial literacy. So we're doing a lot more across our programs, but really in targeted regions to support and focus in on girls. I think, we're still looking at 130 million girls, and we anticipate that number is highly underestimated, that don't have access to any sort of formal or non-formal education structure. So what are we doing in particular to support those cohorts? And we have some really great examples coming from CSOs, coming from other UN agencies, local organizations that we work with, but how are we integrating that in a more thoughtful way? So I'd probably say those 3 pieces are kind of key for us. And I hope next year that I'm able to report some success on, and share with you some concrete examples of what we've been able to advance.
Amy, thank you for that. I actually believe that Dina said something in the chat box to you. So I'm going to pass to Dina and ask if you want to ask your question to Amy directly. You were asking her if she heard of some particular organization.
Yes, and thank you. That's incredible. I love all the work you're doing. I have a million questions, but the first thing that always comes to my mind is collaborations, because we are able to move the needle only and only if we collaborate. So I wonder, there's an organization that I love and I have been a board member for. It's the International Youth Foundation, and they do extraordinary work, and they have a very similar concept. It's called Passport to Success, to provide the necessary skills for young people. And so I was just wondering if you have heard of it, and if not, I'm very happy to put you in touch with them. Maybe there's something that there's to do together.
Yes, I would love that. And Dina, you're on my list to follow up with. So I will send you an email or I'll put my contact information in here. But yes, most definitely. And very much echo your point on collaboration. We see there's incredible work happening across the space, and we'd love to learn, connect, be able to share our journey as well if it's at all helpful. So if there are any other ideas in terms of collaboration opportunities, feel free. I'll put my contact information in the chat, but please feel free to reach out to me. But thank you, Dina.
Can I just say that each of you ladies are affecting change in real time. These are all real life examples. This is all happening on the go. So I want to share and say thank you to each of you for sharing your expertise with us. But given everything that we've heard just now, we also have 280 people on this call who have not had a chance to speak. So I think the best we can do just now is at least run a poll question so everyone can have a chance. And with that, I'm going to ask our coordinators to please load the poll.
Can everyone see that? It looks like we have some responses coming in. Yay.
Please take a moment to respond. We have a large number on the call, so we should get a strong result. Suleika?
I didn't get the results.
I'm just leaving it open as a few more people.
Great.
We have 175.
Perfect.
I'll give it like 20 or 30 more seconds. Looks like a few more people are answering.
People are still not sure of the answer, what they should answer. Yay, nay, maybe. Are we good, Annabelle, to close the poll now? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, should primary education be free for all? 98% answered yes. So that looks good. 1% answered no, and 1% answered other and maybe. So
thank you.
The poll. So building on what we have heard from you and our audience, I would like to have an open and frank conversation with our panelists. We all know the problems and you are already implementing these solutions. So I'll pass it on to Jillian now for our open question segment.
Thank you, Suleika. And I want to say that all of you all have given such a lot of rich information, so much of context. So I'd like to ask an open question to all of you. Please raise your hand and go ahead and respond. This is to our panelists. So my first question is, we're currently living in very challenging times. We talk about SDGs and we're talking jargon. It's lingo. It's a nice to have. It's aspirational. It's not my problem. So with each of you working in this field, what advice would you share to all of us to stay motivated and convincing others of what we're doing? Any panelist, feel free to unmute yourself and go for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Ifwekwobaze from Nigeria. I'm the National Coordinator for Grassroots Entrepreneurship Skills Acquisition Initiative. So we engage in a lot of programs and projects under education, working across the CEDAW political zone in Nigeria. So I will personally like to say that for us to achieve the SDG 4, we need to increase our level of collaboration. We need a collaborative measure to ensure both project implementation and sustainability, especially for the CSOs. We were privileged to get some funds from the Spotlight Initiative, the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative. We implemented the second chance education for survivors and those at risk of gender-based violence in Nigeria. So this project, we implemented it across 6 states in Nigeria, across the 6 geopolitical zone. And under the project, it was managed by UNESCO. We were UNESCO Regional Office Nigeria. We were the implementing partner under the project. And we were able to reach over 60,000 beneficiaries during the first phase of the project. You see, it's actually a lot. This happened as a result of collaborative effort with the EU, the UN, then CSOs like us, implementing partners. I think efforts like this should be encouraged and supported, because most times CSOs have projects, they have activities to implement, but it becomes challenging when there is no funding mechanism available to achieve the implementation. But when there is a strong collaborative force, there is great achievement. So I would strongly recommend that we look into collaboration. Like for now, as an organization, we have a project, the School Child and Rural Teachers Innovation Project. It's called SCATIP. It was launched like 5 years ago, but we are bringing it up again to collaborate with government, and we are requesting for collaboration with, donor agencies that can help to also facilitate things. So this project is actually a very major project, and we're looking at talking more about it on the international education. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really take the point of collaboration, and I'm going to turn to our panelists just now. I think Valentina had her hand up, followed by Dina, to respond to more around what advice would you share along with collaboration that could keep us all motivated. So Valentina and then Dina.
Thank you very much. Very interesting and good question for reflection. But from my point of view, SDG remain a significant tool for development. We as part of society should remember that we have a huge responsibility for what is happening around us, including SDGs implementation. I would like to stress your attention on the following. Yesterday, Oxfam report on deepening of inequalities clearly shows that we need to move beyond business as usual. The SDGs were created exactly for this purpose, to transform our world towards equality, justice, and human rights for all. If we have this vision, we must keep on working with passion. Thank you.
Thanks, Valentina. Dina?
Yes, thank you so much. I think this is the essence of education's work, is how do we keep engaged and how do we promote hope, not in a romantic way, but in an actual, very concrete, tangible way, which is, for example, when we start working with kids and we present the Sustainable Development Goals, many kids tell us, I am very small and these are very big. There's not really much I can do about this, right? And so I like to share with these kids that we as adults also feel the same way. So what's important is to create an experience where we all realize that there is something that we can do and that we care about these issues and that we are interconnected, and what you do in China or in Moldova or in the US or in Mexico matter also to Mali and to Cote d'Ivoire and to the rest of the world. So this is what really drives motivation to the next level, is having experiences that tell us that we can do it, that we can contribute, that we care, and the more that we start from younger ages, the better. For instance, we are starting 3 years ago, we started a curriculum for early childhood. And you would be amazed to see the kind of thoughts, questions, and actions that come up when we translate the Sustainable Development Goals for children that are 3 years old. So that's really the power and of agency of, if you ask any human being, what makes you the happiest person, as it's a human trait to want to do something for others, to contribute, to feel like you're useful, like you're valuable. And so when we realize this, there is no enemy for motivation or for agency or for hope.
You know, both of you lead me to this, to one point, which is you're talking about continuous learning. It's not just learning as a child, it's lifelong learning. And so if we are to foster a culture of continuous learning, lifelong learning, keeps doing something new every day, how can we do that? What would be the one thing you would say to someone? Is it read a book every day or listen to a new song? What is it that you would suggest we do to foster a culture of continuous learning? Based on how the panelists unmute themselves, I'll just ask you to answer. I see Dina's already at it, so go, Dina.
Sorry, I just get very excited with this question because it sounds very silly, but really it's to play. In order for us to be lifelong learners, like the bonobos and the chimpanzees, evolutionarily, we can track down why is it so important to play. And it's a decision, it's a choice we can make. Bonobos play throughout their lives, and they have a matriarch way of society, a way of organizing themselves, where everyone has a very playful understanding and contributes. And then the chimpanzees only play until they are, when they're children, when they're young. And so we can choose as humans, who do we want to look more like our nearest cousins? Do we want to look more like the chimpanzees or like the bonobos? And I would invite us all to work more and play more like the bonobos.
I see Hillary has unmuted and then Amy, so floor is yours, Hillary.
Hi, I just wanted to add a little bit to the previous question regarding how do you keep going, how do you keep yourself motivated? So being in higher education, you're around people who think as you think, or They attend the same workshops that you attend. They go to the same conferences. They understand the culture of learning and want to participate. But it's only when you go outside that bubble, and some of us are in it, that you see not everyone knows the language of critical race theory or microaggressions or misogyny or anything that we've been talking about for the last 50 to 20 years. So what motivates me is just going out and speaking to people and learning that they might not have the same tools that we have to continuously learn and to talk about this. Give workshops, present in front of a class, present in front of people who have never heard some of these theories before. And with that little seed, it'll grow and other people will take that and run with it as well. So that's one way to stay motivated. It's just by talking to people who are not in your field that want to know what you do and want to learn what you know.
Thanks, Hillary. Amy?
Thank you. And I love that point, Hillary. It was one of, I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to join this call in particular is I feel like I just learned a tremendous amount and I'm exposed to a different perspectives and approaches to things. So very much feeling that today, but I echo that from you as well. I think in terms of learning and how you're fostering that, Dina, I mean, I completely agree with you, and we see it in terms of how when you're integrating play into learning and through a number of our partnerships. But I think the other piece of it, and it's very much entangled with that, is somehow fostering curiosity. And I think that at the basic level of asking questions. And I think, there are a tremendous amount of gender studies out there that are done in terms of how many questions girls and women ask versus men. And so I think in particular, being the person in the room that is asking the questions or that, takes a chance, and how small or however big, being, curious, I think you not only learn something for yourself, but you also open up and foster an environment where others can ask, or others are also learning along with you. So I'm trying more and more to integrate that into our team's mentality, but also in the things that I do, every day, is ask the question, keep curious, and continue to learn in every opportunity that you can get.
So from Hillary and Amy, I'm largely getting that we need to get out of our comfort zone. The fact that Amy is here today is out of her comfort zone of the day-to-day of what she hears or regular work. So how many of us are willing to take up the challenge? And I'm throwing it out to the whole call here. Go out of your comfort zone today and do something different. Be a bonobo, as Dina said. And with that, I have one more question that I'm now going to challenge my panelists with, and which is, if there is a song or a book or a movie, something that you hold dear that motivates you to become a lifelong learner, please share that with us. And I'm going to invite the audience in the chat box. If you have it as well, put it in the chat box as well. Let's hear from you as well. So go for it. I'll start with the panelists. Oh, Amy's go for it.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested in hearing other people's responses to this because I've been really, it's been running around in my head for the last 24 hours. But I think I landed on the book that I would constantly have playing in the background. It's by Charlie Maxey, an English writer, called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse.
You took my answer.
But if I'll put the name of the book in the chat, but I think that it's an incredibly simple concept, but it just, I think, goes to a lot of what we've been sharing across the panel today, which is, the act of how you continue to approach the world, how you show up, kindness, thoughtfulness, being open-minded, all of these different elements. And I think those are key in terms of, how do you continue to learn and evolve and grow. So, and thank you so much for this question. I feel like I'm going to steal it and use it as much as I possibly can. So
I just want to say, before I go to Valentina, I want to say thank you to Ekta Soni for putting in the chat box the podcast, like
Yes.
Diary of a CEO. Is that it?
So I like
Valentina,
so much this movie, Mona Lisa Smile, because from my point of view, it's powerful instrument, education for any times. It's transformative of gender roles movie. Thank you. And of course, we have a lot. Thanks a lot. Look in the chat. But it's very important to discuss these issues. Thank you.
I see Lily has also added the podcast Significant Others. If any of our panelists have a recommendation.
Yes. I love this. There's a song that I could play over and over again. Is Color Esperanza, is the color of hope. And I really recommend it. It's by Diego Torres. I will write it in the chat. And then I would like to also recommend a book. It's called The Element by Sir Ken Robinson, because I truly believe that every person can feel in their element and can contribute once they find themselves in their element.
Thank you, Dina. I see the chat box is too fast for me to catch up, so I'm hoping to catch up on it later. If Sulekha, you're able to read some of the names from there, please go ahead. Hillary, do you have a recommendation?
You know, there's so many that I have swirling around in my head. But I have a daughter, and one of her favorite books is The Big Box by Toni Morrison. And we read it over and over again. And it's about how adults treat children and the rights that children have. And having to go through it and explain it and see it in a different light each time we read it is really empowering for her and for me. So it keeps the curiosity going, it keeps the education going, and just trying to explain an adult problem to a child is really educating. So I would use that one for now.
Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, to my panelists for being so accommodating to not the traditional kind of questions. I hope that our audience has learned something new today. And with that, I'm going to open the floor to a few audience questions. I'm going to ask Sulekha and my coordinators to help me. Please raise your hand. Sulekha, Annabelle, or Rachel will unmute you and call on you to ask your question.
Should I read a few of the suggestions in the chat box before we do that? We have a couple minutes. Okay. A podcast named Like Diary of CEO. Patricia Reevy said, Graduate Women Centenary Song. Sonia Hartman says, I don't have a book, but my uncle has a quote. And he's told her, when you learn something new, it's like a new eye in you. And that helps you to see yourself and the world better. It's really beautiful. Another podcast called Significant Others. Books that inspired me, The Secret and Atomic Habits. There is a link that Elizabeth Schumann put out. We Build with the Children, All Material of Learning. Books that have inspired me, Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins and Intentional Living. The Element by Sir Ken Robinson. And there are so many more. This is so great. I wish I could just get like a nice, Excel spreadsheet of this somehow.
Maybe we could do a word cloud after.
Yeah, I have one. So my most recent love is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It is so good, so empowering. I absolutely love it. Just took me out of just fixating on like the past and the future and really focusing on living in the moment, which I think is so super powerful. So I'll pass it to you, Jillian.
Well, okay. Thank you, Sulekha. Thank you for doing all of that. And we're opening up for questions to our panelists. So if you have a question to the panelists, please raise your hand. One of our coordinators will unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question. So if I can ask you just to raise your hand and we'll call on you. I see Dorothy followed by Ekta. So Dorothy, you have the floor. Ekta, you can go next. Dorothy, unmute yourself. Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah. Okay, as a former teacher in New York City, I'm now living in Europe for 50 years, and as a musician, I encountered the problem in primary school that the parents were never behind the kids, if they had parents. In most cases, the parents weren't there. They were broken up. Their grandparents were there. And I see this now with my sister, who also taught in New York City years ago. And are there any programs, especially in New York, where the parents can be involved, or anyone who's taking care of these kids, to promote learning? Because if the parents are not involved, I mean, especially with minority groups, these kids go to school, they may be very interested, but their peers are not behind them, and their parents don't know what's going on.
So I'm not sure if anyone has a specific New York City-based expertise. So maybe I'll park your question, Dorothy, and I'll figure it out and come back to you separately. So if you could leave your email in the chat box, I'll figure that out for you.
Thank you.
Of course. Ekta, floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. First of all, it was such a great experience attending this meeting and got so much of information and knowledge. So really thanks that I, kind of got all that inputs. My question is, I think sometime back we discussed about how to, kind of collaborate and, work together. So the query is that, we are all working in silos, and a lot of good work is happening around. A lot of programs are, kind of being taken care of, and people are making that difference. But that communication, is somewhere, I think everyone is working in silos. And as we said, collaboration, is there a way of communicating it more frequently? Has there been a kind of a roadmap that has been articulated, that how that communication can happen? That's first question. And secondly, is there a possibility of, speaking opportunities? Because, a lot of people would be coming with different experience, and they can showcase what they have, the knowledge, and, kind of share their knowledge, like lunch and lessons, or, something like that. So is that a possibility?
So is that question for me?
It's for the entire forum. First, is there a roadmap how we are communicating with the so many programs going on? How, if we have to collaborate, or, if we want to participate, is there a way of, kind of, is there a newsletter or somewhere we can have more communication going on? So, that's first. And second, speaker opportunities.
So what I could suggest then, to make it easier, each of us as representing our individual organization or group has contact information, which will lead you to like a monthly newsletter. So my suggestion would be is, if you put your details in the chat box, you can pick up the newsletters that say, let's say, for example, Learning's Passport or Women's Major Group has, and you will be on track with what each group is coming out with. At NGO CSW, you can subscribe to our newsletter as well. We are in information overload mode just now, ahead of CSW, so you're sure to get a lot of information. And I think speaking slots work the same way. As long as you are aware of what's happening, you will be able to put your information and apply. Most of these are application slots. So I'm gonna ask Amy or Valentina to jump in if they have anything more.
Thank you.
Valentina?
First of all, thank you very much for our wonderful discussion. Of course, I am optimistic in connection of education and gender equality. Specifically, which focus on gender education is our field of activity, due to the fact that gender education represents a critical investment for living together and building a more peaceful future for all. But it's very important, our involvement, our responsibility, our attitude, and our contribution. we are responsible for all that happening around of us. We can discuss more issues. I see some questions, but during one event, it's impossible to cover all. I think we create a good platform to start our discussion and reflection. And personally, I collected many examples for how to work with my students in the future. For example, I recommend many exercises to collect songs, to collect movie, to analyze it. What is impact? What is the impact for today, but for the future too? And what should be our action? But I think only in common effort, all stakeholders, all structures, we can do it. We can transform this world, and we can contribute to connection of gender equality and education. And thank you very much again for this opportunity. It's for me, it's honor to participate today together with you. Thank you.
Amy, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. I think I've been thinking a lot about kind of the collaboration piece and how I think there's a very important point there on there is one of the things that we try really hard to do on the Learning Passport side is to really not to ensure that we're not replicating things, we're not redundant, we're providing, we're able to leverage the amazing work that's going around, happening around. And I think to that point, these events are really critical in that and connecting people who may not otherwise be connected or have the opportunity to learn from one another. And so I very much appreciate what you guys are doing and kind of the ethos of the organization and what you're moving forward with. And to that point, I think the conversations that happen probably after these events, and I'm very much thinking about, we have the World Economic Forum happening right now. We got through COP28. And for me, I think the conversations that either happen in the corridors or over coffee or after the events, the one-on-one conversations that are about, oh, you made me think about this, or have you thought about that, or, you should talk to somebody, as Dina had done. I think those are the ones that are really, make the small steps forward that we need to be fostering more of that environment of coming together and learning from one another. And that is, ultimately what I'm hoping that we can do more of from a UNICEF Learning Passport side is how are we being a lot more thoughtful and purposeful about coming together in an effective way so that we're leveraging the collective expertise that is out there. And there's a tremendous amount of knowledge and perspectives that we could do with, in terms of supporting the work that we're doing and work that we could be supporting as well. So I'd probably leave it at that.
Thanks, Amy. Suleika, I just want to ask, have I missed any hand up for a question? I want to make sure that I haven't missed anybody.
There was a question in the in the chat box for guess I can just pose it for all. Oh, I think it was for Amy. It was for how does her passport reach rural communities?
Thank you. I was trying to respond to some of those. So for us, UNICEF's mandate, I should say, is really focused on marginalized populations. So for us, the rural communities, marginalized communities that are outside of that don't have access to formal education is a huge focus. And what we've found is our offline learning passport program is really important in being able to do that. So we're talking about a lot of communities that don't have connectivity, or if they do have connectivity, it's intermittent or it's for an hour during this time. And so we've built with a technology company in Germany, we've built a device that that gives you an internet-like experience. We then integrate the Learning Passport software onto that device. We take that device, we put it in learning centers and schools. We do it in urban centers, but it's very much focused on communities that don't have access, which are often rural. And then learners are able to log into the device, very similar to how we log into a wireless network, and run through the trainings and courses on the Learning Passport like they were on the internet. And I'll put it in there again, but I will. There's a great video of how we're doing this in a learning center in Zimbabwe, and the technology is an enabler. But what you see is, students that are going through coursework, that are watching videos, a teacher that's integrated it into what she's teaching. And it's really all about that element, right? We're a tool to support that learning, but those devices play a really critical role in that rural access. So I'll stick the video in here, and if you have any questions on how it works or where we are, happy to discuss that. But offline, in terms of moving the needle on the equity agenda, is going to be a huge focus of ours in next year, but also as long as this program, in the totality of the program.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Do you want to call on the next hand, Jillian? Yeah.
I'm unable to see the next hand, so that's why I was asking for help.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Patricia Osei, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. There you go.
Right, all right, thank you very much. Mine is not a question, actually. It's just to say thank you for the entire team for putting up this section together. It's been an amazing time. It's worth my time. And I would say it's a wonderful year to begin the year. So it's a wonderful program to start the year with. And I've learned so much. It's been very educating. I've taken so much notes down to go and share with my team and, of course, my organization, so that we can put heads together and see how we can collaborate with you all. It's amazing to be part of such a wonderful session with women all over the world, and of course organizations talking about how we can all bring value to the table on moving forward, our country, our nations, and of course our local community. So once again, thank you, and it's been very educating.
I should say thank you to Patricia, because she's closed and said thank you on my behalf. So I want to take the opportunity to thank each one of our panelists and every one of you for joining. This conversation is hopeful because I feel good work is happening, good work is in play. And as a parting gift, NGO CSW has also worked on a list of SDG actions that one can take, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to put it in the chat box. This is just day-to-day activity items that if you're looking for at your front door. If you just need inspiration of what to do something, you can just look at this list. The 24th of January is also International Education Day, for those of you who weren't aware. And NGO CSW will be loading our advocacy kit. We will be launching it on that day, but it'll also be in the chat box. You're welcome to use it. You're welcome to share it. And on that note, I would like to thank everybody for joining. And in true NGO CSW tradition, I invite you to open your cameras, unmute yourselves, to a round of applause and a warm goodbye from all of us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
everyone.
Namaste.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
All the best. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Bye, everyone.
Dag. Fijne dag.